This episode of the Kill by Kill podcast is brought to you in part by the brand new zombie thriller Unhuman, which is now available on digital and on demand. When a high school field trip goes terrifyingly awry, a group of students' trust in each other is truly tested to the limit in a brutal, horrifying fight for survival. Buy or rent Unhuman and watch it today. Unhuman is unrated and from Paramount Pictures. Now, to celebrate the digital premiere of Unhuman, we have 5 digital copies of the film for lucky listeners to sink their teeth into. Just email us at killbykillpod@gmail.com with Unhuman in the subject line for your chance to win your very own copy. And now, the body count continues. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Patreon bonus time is here. That's right, we're talking about Dracula, but wait for it, 1979 style, on Kill by Kill. Hey there, hi there, ho there, it's your old pal Patrick Hamilton. I'm coming to you once again from the English seaside, where all the wolves are free to rip out as many throats as they can find. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, but of course, strictly for our patrons who help us keep the lights on here. And we do a special bonus episode, and there's only one person that I would ever trust to sail with me with 6 boxes of earth from my native soil. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
So wait, does that make me the Renfield in this? Because that makes, I'll take that. I'm far more of a Renfield than a Dracula. As much as I like to think I could be a very cool Dracula, I'm very much more of a Renfield type.
I had wondered if, because I'd gotten this fancy Blu-ray from Shout Factory, like a year or so ago, and I was wondering if I had because I know I watched it a couple of times. And I was wondering if I had taken any notes, and I just put Dracula into my notes app where I keep all the show notes. And it was so many fucking mentions of Dracula.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it is called Dracula.
But Dracula in Friday the 13th, in Nightmare on Elm Street, it comes up so many times for different shows.
You mean of us talking about it?
Of us talking about it. It comes up in Amityville 3D, Slugs, The Fan, Fade to Black, Mikey, Fear No Evil Volume 2, Fear No Evil Volume 1, Nightmare on Elm Street 5, Dream Child, Friday the 13th Part 8.
Just all the times we've mentioned Dracula?
This is all the times, just in my notes. That's when I've written down Dracula for the show.
And yet somehow this is our very first one. We have done, have we done anything besides the space vampire Buck Rogers?
I don't believe we have done a proper vampire yet.
We definitely haven't done Dracula specifically. I've talked about Bram Stoker's Dracula on another podcast. I talked about the Bela Lugosi version Dracula on another podcast, but not this one specifically. Right, and this is our Kill by Kill first traditional vampire movie that we're covering here in our 5.5 years.
Yeah,
which is surprising because I fucking love vampire movies.
I do too, but the one thing about vampire movies or Dracula movies or anything in between there is that they tend not to be overly kill heavy, and they have a lot of characters you get to know real well. So that, and on a podcast where we're typically talking about characters who show up and their big character trait is they're an asshole.
Are we talking about one Jonathan Harker?
Oh man, Jonathan Harker.
I actually, while watching that, I tweeted that one of these days I was going to make a list ranking all of the Jonathan Harkers from worst to least bad. Because there are no good Jonathan Harkers. Probably the closest, and this is mostly because I just have an affection for Keanu Reeves, is probably the Jonathan Harker in Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah.
Because he's trying, at least. He is trying.
Yes. And like he figures out that he's kind of in a bad situation. He tries to get out of it. And Dracula's like, what if I throw 3 sexy ladies at you? He's like, why are you doing this to me? I love that Dracula. I mean,
it is a flawless motion picture. It really is. And I mean that. I'm not being ironic. I think it is pretty much a perfect movie.
I think it's exactly what it wants to be. It has no desire to be a film of the moment or to represent current filmmaking. It is, we're going to make the most old-fashioned Dracula we can, but also make it gory as fuck. And
super duper horny.
Yes.
I mean, that's not to say that the book isn't horny, but it's kind of a sort of reserved horniness.
It's an English horny,
right? And it's also, the best you can do in a epistolatory form book. You could only go so far to describe horniness in like a diary or like a letter to somebody. But this is most
diaries are hornier than that.
Well, that's true. That's true.
That being said, yeah, I quite enjoy that one. I think it ranks amongst the upper echelon of everything he's done on film. And I felt so at the time, like I was into it. Like, yes, this is so cool. And then everyone else tried to make something like that and failed spectacularly.
Yep. I couldn't even tell you what the magic, as it were, that made that work so well. I mean, it might be just a lightning in a bottle moment of a perfect cast. I mean, even the weaker links, again, Keanu Reeves, even Winona Ryder, bless her heart, is not great at times. Her accent's shaky. Yeah. But you've got, a whole big supporting cast of people who are just giving 175% to their role. And then you've got Gary fucking Oldman.
Emphasis on the fucking.
Yes, sir.
And that's the thing about Dracula. There's all sorts of ways to do it. It's I don't think that book is any particular great shakes in terms of storytelling. Like, I think Frankenstein is better written, but there's a lot of room in there for you to do a lot of things with it. So this comes at a really interesting time in American and modern media's fascination with vampires.
Yeah, this was 1970. Yeah, we're actually not talking about Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Right. Believe it or not.
We could do a whole podcast just on that, but we're talking about the 1979 version, which I have described in the past as being your mom's favorite Dracula movie. And I say that because it's my mom's favorite Dracula movie. My mom liked this movie very much. Uh-huh. I believe the first time I saw it was watching it with her. Mm-hmm. Other than a small handful of Hammer Horror and Salem's Lot. Yeah, this was probably my first exposure to real vampire movies, and it happened to come out the same year as Salem's Lot. And also the remake of Werner Herzog's remake of Nosferatu. Yes. And a not very well-aged movie called Love at First Bite, which was a comedy
seem to
take.
Watch on cable nonstop, and I've never revisited it.
I haven't seen it in years. I have to imagine that there's a lot of gags in it just that have not carried over well into the modern world.
I think I have to assume my mom had a thing for him.
For George Hamilton?
For George Hamilton, because we watched this and we specifically got cable or a VCR. I can't remember which it is, but we specifically got it because Zorro the Gay Blade was becoming available.
See, this is why you asked me to do this podcast with you, because who else is going to remember Zorro the Gay Blade?
No one should. No one should. It came on TCM like 2 years ago, and I let's watch 5 minutes of it. And I'm like, oh my God, this is aside from Brenda Vaccaro. Like if you got a thing for Brenda Vaccaro, you're in. But
4 minutes too much.
So yeah, and in the other element to this is that you have a Broadway production of that stars Frank Langella on stage in 1978 and 77 and into the beginning of 78. And that's the same year like The Wiz is on Broadway and Chorus Line and what else? Shoot. Anyways, I'm going to send you a commercial, Gina.
Okay.
For the I Love New York campaign.
Yes, I remember.
Do you remember this?
I do, because we actually we got a lot of New York channels down in where I lived in New Jersey. So yeah, I do remember that jingle.
Yeah. So they would force Broadway casts into the smallest black box they possibly could. Oh, Grease was the other musical I was thinking of. And they would just like, I love New York. But they would shoot them like, because they were larger casts, like with a fisheye lens. So it looks like a Beastie Boys video. It's wild. At the end of the 1977 one, you have Frank Langella show up, his hair bouffanted within an inch of its life. And he looks dead into camera and goes, I love New York, especially in the evening. And they're like, great cut, Frank. You're a genius. Everybody, an 8-ball of cocaine for Frank. Frank deserves it.
Let's talk about Frank Langella for a minute.
Let's talk about Frank Langella.
For one thing, I love the fact that he wrote his memoirs a couple of years ago, and a lot of it focused on how much ass he got back in the day.
Like he's like Wilt Chamberlain, but not rapey. So.
Dude had more panties thrown at him than Victoria's Secret salesman.
He talks about his time on stage as Dracula as essentially every husband that I ever talked to for like 3 years was like, my wife fucked me so good that night after we saw you. And he just, I don't know. I guess I've historically had I'm an actor's actor opinion of him, but when he talks about stuff now, like his favorite on-screen role was Skeletor in the He-Man movie.
It's delightful.
He just comes off as like a really interesting guy. And yeah, he apparently had sex with everything that moved from 1975 to 1989 by the sound of it. So good for him. And when you watch this movie, you can kind of get it.
I mean, he kind of redefines the words, and I use this word a lot to describe male actors in certain movies. And that word is smoldering.
Mm-hmm.
He I get it.
Yeah. And it also is helpfully defined. The one sort of trick they really do pick up from the Universal original is the way Lugosi would hone in on people. And then Frank Langella takes it up a level. He enters and he takes off his coat, throws it at Doctor Who, and lines up the first woman he can find.
Oh, I love Bela Lugosi sort of kind of skulks into the room a little bit, but Langella kind of walks in like, here I am, bitches.
Who wants to fuck? It's basically Dracula's thing here. It is, I mean, for a defining trait, like it is different than every other Dracula. Like, as I love that Bram Stoker one, but he definitely comes off as an alien who still wants to fuck. But
he only really wants Mina.
Right.
Lucy's just kind of a that's a fun thing he has on the side, but he really wants Mina. Here he just
like get his mojo going. It's like what's a starter girl that I can work on?
Here he's just like, I'll take y'all on. Come here, baby.
And the one of the things that is so amazing about him that I don't think you would ever have really seen on the stage version, which if you have not, like, just Google the Dracula 1977 Broadway gory version, and you'll see the sets which were done by Edward Gorey, the illustrator, and in a paper and ink style. So they're all 2D. But
yeah, it's great.
He's drawn every element, every book, every, grain of wood is drawn by him. And they just transform that stage into all the places it needs to be for that play.
Yeah, if you want to talk smoldering, Frank Langella, when he eventually stopped doing the role, was replaced on Broadway by Raul Julia.
Raul Julia. So, like, they weren't fucking around with Dracula on Broadway. They're like, well, who's the hottest fucking dude we can find? And then eventually, at some point, one of the bosom buddies that isn't Tom Hanks fills in that role.
You be nice. He just passed away last year. I know.
But if you're talking about sex on legs, Peter Scolari is not exactly.
They did. It's like Frank Langella, the Raul Julia, and I mean, so when I think mysterious European, I definitely think Peter Scolari.
Well, he knew how to juggle, so that's good.
One thing I should point out is that if you are looking for a faithful adaptation of Dracula, this ain't it.
No. This is entirely based. It's adapted even from the play version, which really reduces who's in it. Like, I don't even think they have Amina in the stage version. They just have Lucy and the maid are your women.
Yeah, totally. And this one they even take it a step further, where now Van Helsing is Mina's father. He's pretty fucking useless, as it turns out.
I think we will talk about this, but I think that is everyone states that as like it's a negative. I think it's the point of him in this movie. I'm going to give it up that the point of Van Helsing is he knows a lot, and that makes him dangerous, but he is not a physical threat. No one is a physical threat against fucking Dracula. What kills him is modernity. Anyways, go on.
Jack Seward is now
Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, he's played by Donald Pleasance, as hamming it up as always. And he's I'll get to my favorite scene with him in a little bit, but he is now Lucy's father.
Yeah.
There's no Arthur Holmwood, no Quincy P. Morris. The only thing, the roles of Mina and Lucy are kind of switched for some reason. But one thing that stands true, Jonathan Harker, fucking wet sock.
Just a dweeb of the highest order.
And it doesn't help that even though it's supposed to be like 1910 or so, he has like this little shitty mustache and a Beatles haircut.
Yeah. He's not hot. He's not doing it for me. He's not even traditionally handsome. He is the real wet blanket of this movie.
He always is.
Yeah. Why does he always have to be a weenie? Because if Count Watch Your Girl is going to sweep into the room, like you don't have to have a Dorcas Malorcas off to the side. Like, well, yeah, I'm choosing Dracula over him. Why not have somebody who's like, he's hot, but I'm still taking Dracula over him. That works a lot better for me.
Well, it's just this Jonathan, he doesn't seem scared or threatened. He just seems annoyed.
Right. Yeah. Well, because yes, everything's getting in his way and it's just not proper. No. And he's they're playing him off as a fop.
He's peeved when Lucy is still upset about Mina's death like a day later.
Yeah. There's nothing to root for here. Why would you like this guy? Why would I root for him? And then the thing that you hear over and over again is I begin to root for Dracula in this movie. And I think that's okay because the course here is that Dracula is a romantic hero in the sense that in the same way the Bram Stoker is, just a different angle of it, in that he is lost. He does not have a family or connection to the world anymore. And he finds this woman and all he wants to do is have laser sex with her. And you're kind of like, I get it.
Yeah, it definitely both this and the Francis Ford Coppola version, which is in all ways a superior movie, and yet it lifted a lot from this movie. You know, the Dracula kind of crawling up the side of a building, which in this it looks pretty good. I
love this. John Badham shoots the fuck out of this. The scene where they're having dinner and it's just like, it looks like there's a million candles around them. The production design is fucking boss. Like, there's a lot to love about this movie. It's about 10 minutes too long, but it's still beautiful to look at. It is just, they threw money, $12 million, all of it's on the screen.
Yeah, and in both of these movies, what you have is more of a forbidden romance angle to it. So, the audience is left feeling a little confused as to who they're supposed to be rooting for here.
Yes, I think so. And that is the goal of it, is to confuse whom you're rooting for and give you the idea that someone, even after they kind of get that he's not exactly human, still wants to hop in the sack with the guy. And the way they kind of telegraph Dracula's powers here is Frank Langella has the ability to make his eyes quiver. And unlike the articulated hand movements that Lugosi tried to do this with, all Langella has to do is look at you, and the camera could just be right up in his face. You see all of that puss. It's fantastic. There's not a problem with it. I heard a podcast say that he was a little long in the tooth to play Dracula. I'm like, fuck you.
He was 40.
That is, to me, a hetero misadventure.
Also, they didn't read the book.
No, they didn't.
Because if you read the book, do you know who Dracula more looks like? And I love pointing this out to people. He's describes an older man with a bushy white mustache. So who I think of? Sam Elliott. Would you turn down Sam Elliott if he was hovering outside your bedroom window at nighttime?
No. He can kind of tippy tap at my window.
If he told you, you'll cross, earth and sea to do my bidding.
You'll cross earth and sea to do my bidding.
Yes, please. What can I do for you, sir?
Oh my God. What a movie. What a fucking picture. I love this movie. So we've talked a lot over the years about vampire laser sex, but I just want to throw it out here. There's something in the water when it comes to 1979 horror movies with lasers. Because not only did Alien grab Pink Floyd's laser get up, but John Bandham reached out to the Who and said, you know that laser thing? And they're like, yeah. Can we borrow that? And they're like, yeah, sure. You can borrow it for like a week. We're not going out for a month. So 2 horror movies in the same year were like, lasers are it, everybody. It's just lasers and horror from now on.
And then it just, a year later, just went away.
Only the thing that Alien doesn't have is that they start to fuck and then they fade out and a bat flies through a tunnel. That's how you know they're having sex.
Still a better sex scene than the hang gliders that are cut to in the middle of the sex scene in Color of Night.
I mean, bats and hang gliders, they feel like of a family.
I feel like turning into a wolf would make more sense in this kind of situation. But
well, you're gonna have to wait for Bram Stoker's for wolf sex.
What do I
then
know?
You get it straight up. Just come on out to the garden. I'm gonna half transform into wolf, and we gonna fuck.
Sure, okay.
All right. We mentioned him briefly, but why not get into it? Laurence Olivier as Abraham Van Helsing. He, I think, is really supposed to be a know-it-all weenie, who people kind of like, come on. And he's kind of like, no, if I shove a piece of garlic in this dude's face, like, he's going to back up. And he's right. He's just never going to physically be a matchup or a threat. And this seemed to be on when Siskel and Ebert covered this, they were very into the fact like Laurence Olivier is not a threat. I didn't feel like, there was really conflict in this. This movie is not about conflict. It's about a guy who wants to fuck. And you're like, finally. That's what the movie's about. I think they don't get it.
Just let the man fuck.
Just let the man fuck.
It's been hundreds of years.
Hundreds of years. There's all these guys coming at him. And it's like, all right. You know what? Maybe if I move to a different island, maybe if I go to England, maybe the chicks will be looser around those parts.
And they are, because Lucy and Mina, both of them are just unlacing that corset as soon as he walks in the room.
The weird thing about Dracula movies is they're all kind of in conversation with one another. And this is a big one that kind of borrows from that original Nosferatu, although the remake that happens the same year also kind of does it, where instead of that Friday the 13th thing of, well, it's been a good run, there's a sense when they see Dracula at the window, is like, well, I'm going to cower my pillow, but I'm not going to move, because if I move, I might not get dick tonight.
I'm both terrified and deeply in need of an orgasm.
Yes, I think terrified of an orgasm would be a decent subtitle for this movie. Put it on the DVD box.
But yeah, it's, again, as somewhat different from other renditions of Dracula, this version of they reverse the characters. So the Dracula's bride is ultimately in this Mina. Traditionally, it's Lucy. Jesus.
Yeah.
Lucy is the one that is killed earlier in the story. Here, it's Mina who's killed, and then Lucy. It's the same character. I don't know why they.
And no one can say why they changed.
There's really no need to have changed their names, but
to throw constant Dracula raiders off the scent, so you're discombobulated as to what's going to happen. I'm not sure. They don't know themselves. Like, I listened to a whole hour and 15-minute podcast with John Badham, and he's like, why'd you change the names? He's like, can't remember. Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Okay, good enough. But Lucy, at no point does Lucy ever seem afraid of him.
No. In fact, Lucy's openly ballsy from the word go, and sometimes just comes off like kind of a dick.
Yeah, she's a little salty. Again, as is often the case in these kinds of movies, her and Jonathan seem kind of more like, an arranged marriage.
Yes, yeah. Where, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Right, where, he's all smooching on her and, telling her he loves her, and she's just kind of like, all right.
I mean, I understand why you would.
Well, yeah, I mean, that mustache is gross, but not a fan of just the mustache. I'm really not.
Yeah. It takes a hell of a face to make it work.
You got to be like Mark Ruffalo and In the Cut. And that's saying a lot because he might have been a murderer in that.
Still undetermined. It's been a while since I've seen it.
He may have killed something. I mean, it is determined that the killer that they're looking for is another guy, but that does not mean he has not killed people. But anyway, he's still the only one that can pull off just a mustache.
Yeah.
But anyway, so she's just like, oh, hello. Finally, something interesting is happening because my father makes me live in an insane asylum and occasionally help out.
And when you need help, like Oliver walks the dog on occasion. She helps down at the insane asylum, things children do for you.
She helps rustle the patients.
Make sure that the one woman with the baby still has that baby till she don't.
Because she has a baby in the insane asylum.
Yeah.
Also, this is part of a long line of Donald Pleasance playing characters that are terrible at their jobs.
Oh yeah.
He keeps leaving his post at this insane asylum and saying, "Oh, my people will look out for them." His people seems to be one person.
Now, I think instead, he's not so much a doctor as he is a warden. And
it's interesting because the character is supposed to be a medical doctor.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I guess that explains why when Mina is attacked by Count Dracula, and it only takes one session to take her down, because for whatever reason she is described as already being frail and sickly, which again I think that was something that was for this.
Yes.
Literally it takes one visit from Dracula to kill her. But she wakes up, she can't breathe. And she's struggling to catch her breath. And it basically, Donald Pleasance comes in and it basically turns into that scene in Airplane when Leslie Nielsen's trying to calm the woman down. Will you please control yourself?
That's not how medicine works. That's not how anything works.
Desperate for someone to say, what are you doing? That is not helping her breathe.
No, it almost becomes like a dog pile. Like if they throw more bodies on top of her, she'll magically get better.
Shaking and slapping her, and she's like,
like you can't slap someone into breathing. That's not how medicine works.
I just expected to see like a line of every other character, like lining up behind Dr. Seward, and he's got like one's got a baseball bat, one's got a little pistol.
Yeah. Everyone, yeah. Speaking of Airplane, the thing that occurred to me this time watching this motion picture, the score in this is by John Williams. One of his more forgotten scores, only because it wasn't really commercially available for you to listen to for a really long time.
That's a shame.
It is a shame. I think it's one of his best. Now, I've heard it a shit ton of times because this was my Dracula theme on the Universal Studios backlot tour. When I would punch in 39, Dracula would play. So I've heard it a lot in Little Europe, especially. But what I didn't notice until this viewing was that it kind of sounds like the theme to Airplane. All it is the end note is different, but and the Airplane, it's sped up, but it's the same fucking melody. Or as close to it as you can possibly get. And I'm like, Now I can't listen to this without laughing. How did I never notice how close to Airplane this is?
And for some reason, whenever I try to remember before I rewatched it, I try to remember the music from it. I always thought of the music from Young Frankenstein.
Right? Yeah.
That they played to like draw the monster back.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's not. Again, not very far off. Like they're all kind of kissing cousins, and to a certain regard. Donald Pleasance really eating his way through this motion picture. Constantly has snacks. John Badham in an interview referred to him as a handkerchief actor because if he has hand business, you can't cut away from his dialogue because people were going like, it's inconsistent. Something's in his hand, then out of his hand. And so his goal was to always have business that you couldn't cut away from. And this is a prime example of it. He's eating, he's mopping his brow, he's holding on to 2 crosses in a graveyard, everything.
Yeah, I have to go back and watch this and try to freeze this, try to figure out what this is. But the morning after Mina dies, Jonathan is trying to get Lucy to eat something, and he like, I don't know what the hell this is. And he's trying to tell her to eat. It looks like fried eggs. It looks like corned beef hash. Neither of these things are I think were commonly found on an Edwardian era dinner table. But she's just like, no, I'm not hungry. I'm like, yeah, I can't imagine why. That looks delicious.
Yeah. Mrs. Galloway special there.
Yeah.
Between her and Swales and Walter, who unfortunately there's not a ton of Sylvester McCoy in this movie.
Was he again?
But Sylvester McCoy?
Yeah.
Because I watched The Hobbit with Ollie because he had read the book in school. So I found a 3D Blu-ray of it on eBay for like $15 and I got it and watched all 11D hours of The Hobbit with him. And Sylvester McCoy shows up with bird poop in his hair.
Oh, right. Yeah, he was, yeah, that's right.
But he is a delightful actor to watch because he is completely unhinged. Like all of the English actors here are just eating scenery as much as possible just to keep weight with Frank Langella, and it's not working.
Yeah, no. he plays his role very, very subtly.
Yeah.
He never really raises his voice at any point. Because he doesn't have to.
Yeah.
He just, it's interesting because he's not particularly a physically imposing man.
No. But everyone in here is so slight and short that it doesn't much matter anyway.
But he's just, because he has brown eyes, I guess, it makes him quote unquote exotic looking.
Yeah, I guess.
Like he's canonically from Romania, but he doesn't bother using an accent or anything. Whereas Bela Lugosi, he was Hungarian, but the accents are somewhat similar. And then Gary Oldman lays that accent on real fucking thick. But Frank Langella doesn't bother with any accent at all, which is interesting when he's talking about, the tiny village he comes from. They do things differently.
Yeah, the old country that he's from. And
it's like the old country of the Hampshires, Frank.
Right, like the last 500 years of Connecticut. What's happening here? I've ruled over the actors' workshop for millennia. I'm a king of my kind. The one person we really haven't discussed at all is Kate Nelligan. And she confuses me, Gina, as an actor.
I feel like every role Kate Nelligan plays, and this is not very kind of me, but I've seen her in enough movies. She is always a fucking bitch. every single one of her roles, she's always a bitch.
Yeah.
Like she just has that, kind of snotty air about her.
Mm-hmm.
And people thought that Frank Langella was too old for this part. She's a little too old for her part. I think.
Yeah, she's like 29 here. Everyone's kind of aged up beyond where they should be, but it's such an economy of scale that everyone is slightly older than they should be, that I'm kind of like, it's a give me, whatever.
I just don't get from
that bitchy
her
edge of her really comes across.
I don't get from her, the impression that she's this, ripe flower of innocence, just, ready for the plucking.
Mm-hmm.
As it were,
no.
by Dracula.
No.
She seems very, and when I say worldly and experienced, I don't mean to say she sounds slutty. That's not what I'm talking about. She just seems like, an educated woman of the world.
Yes, yeah.
Whereas, again, it's actually Mina. Winona Ryder played her, she seems like very naive, not childlike necessarily, but you buy it when she's very fluttery and giggly when her and Lucy are looking at the dirty pictures together and and you get that the first time she and Jonathan really passionately kiss is literally the day they get married.
You're right.
But I just whatever this characterization is, I don't really buy it. And again, maybe she's just trying a different take on this character, where it's not that she's an innocent who's secretly begging to be corrupted. It's that she just finds Jonathan boring, which he is.
Yes, he is. She's right. And I also think there's and I'm going to borrow here from the Final Girls in their discussion of this, but it's a very second wave feminism look at this, where she's making the decision to investigate Count Dracula. Like, she goes out of he does eventually climb on the roof for her, but she's also like showing up at the castle like, hey, what's haps? And he's like, if you're going to be hanging out with me, there will be a point where you're like, boy, this is a bad idea. So I'm giving you a shoot right now. Like, this doesn't need to happen. This is your choice. And she's like, oh, I have nothing to fear. I am Lucy Seward. And you're kind of like, okay, all right. So
I sort of feel like Jonathan, just let her go.
Yeah. Jonathan cannot be one upped. There's a compulsion within him that's like, well, we made an arrangement and hands were shook, and now I'm going to make sure you don't make off on a ship with my Lucy, even though like 5 seconds ago she tried to bite my head off, and 10 minutes ago a vampire bat bit my face, and I'm like, Professor. He's a weenie. Oh man, I've never wanted a character to die quite as much lately.
I mean, there comes to a certain point where if your beloved is torn between you and someone else, sometimes it's just better off for everybody if you just let them go.
Truly.
It's gonna suck for a little while, but you'll find someone new.
Yeah. No, he's got the sportos, the motorheads, geeks, sluts, bloods, wastoids, dweebies, dickheads. They all adore Dracula. They think he's a righteous dude, and he can't handle it, is what it comes down to.
I mean, he's a solicitor. If he moved out of that shitty little town where the only thing that seems to be happening is an insane asylum, he could probably find someone new.
I'm sure he could, with his goofy little motor car that he has to crank up. He's intimidated by a man on a horse.
He's got these stupid little goggles on when he drives his car. I realize it's because they haven't invented the windshield yet.
But even so.
It just looks so dumb.
It's dumb. He's dumb. It's all dumb.
Just another, you should have fucked your lady, Jonathan. You should have fucked her.
Really, listen, like we learned in A Night in Heaven, your penetration too much for you tonight. There's many ways to get your lady off. Just like read a book, like consult the Kumasat. Fuck it. Read a book.
The sex book.
The sex book, whatever it is where people are super bendy and you're like, I don't know, I'm going to get a Charlie horse doing that. Is this the horniest fucking episode of the show we've ever done?
I
mean, we've been talking about erotic thrillers.
I don't think
we've talked about fucking nearly as much as we are right now.
No. Well, I mean, we've yet to do an actual full episode on Bram Stoker's Dracula. We should do one in the future.
I think we would almost want to break that bad boy up because there's so much shit to talk about.
And I feel like we know several people who would demand to guest on it. So we need to like spread that out. Yeah. Spread that out. Oh,
if you know what I mean.
I think Carnival.
Werewolf howl. So, the other knock on this movie is it's not particularly scary. Like that's not really the point of it.
I will say that when I was a child, I was very freaked out by the scene where Mina shows up in the kind of underground like crypt thing.
That's frightening as hell. That is nightmare fuel.
I mean, the makeup doesn't look so good from a modern perspective. You can definitely see she's got that like oatmeal face thing happening, but it's still very like when she kind of shows up in the reflection of the that freaked me out when I was a kid, and even now I'm still like that's still pretty creepy.
The pointy red eyes where it's all black, but the one red point.
Yeah.
And the way she says Papa. No.
That's the scariest it gets. And it still works, I think.
I think that is a hell of a fucking scene. It's when you get into Dracula's crypt and he's like, you can't defeat me. And then he turns into a vampire bat and you're hearing him go, that's not scary. That's a non-scary confrontation. And it's not made any more frightening by, Mr. Goggles crying on the floor because a vampire bat is making a meal of his cheekbone. Like the amount of times fucking Van Helsing shows up and he's like lining up a steak for the heart. And he's like, give it another 10 seconds. Really make this count. Like, just fucking stake this dude.
You can pull it out and try again. Jesus.
Oh my God. Just give it one fell swoop. And if you miss the heart, go in for a second. But where the fun part about like the ending of this is that Dracula is hoisted by his own petard. Literally.
Yes.
Like this is what it is. And
he's slow roasted like a rotisserie chicken.
in a scene in which I guess he visits the corona of the sun, like he gets a space 2001 moment while exposed to the sunlight.
I mean, I get it. I have very sensitive skin when I'm out in the sun. Yeah. And it does occasionally feel like I'm about 6 inches away from the sun's surface.
Yeah. It's a wild directorial decision.
And yet it takes the bold approach of suggesting that he might have gotten away.
Yeah. That he kind of flutters about and you can go, oh, well, maybe, even though Lucy kind of it becomes unvampirized at that point.
Well, kind of. I mean, she seems pretty chill with the idea that he still might be, flying around out there.
True. Does it make sense? No. Does Abraham Van Helsing throw a hook and line up Dracula in the back? I guess in one of the open bullet holes that Jonathan shot through him, thinking I'm a big man.
Yeah, that had to take some arm strength, considering that Van Helsing was like, already run through with one of his stakes. So,
but he kind of picks it up and kind of, I mean, Laurence Olivier was in poor health. Like, if you put his wig on wrong, he could bleed out. That's how bad he was at this point. That is that true story. So the way he tosses that hook is not exactly, oh my God, look out. It's just a real lucky strike, I think.
Yes.
And then Jonathan Harker goes, oh, a pulley system. And then Space 2001.
And then he probably took all the credit for himself.
Yes. Oh, undoubtedly. He's telling everyone in the village. Did everyone know the Count Dracula I killed? I did it.
That was me. Yeah, because Lucy's not going to remember, and Van Helsing's dead, and I forget what happened to Dr. Seward. He fucked off somewhere. And
he took a nap. He kind of disappears.
Shit, it's lunchtime.
He's trapped in the basement. I don't know what
he's off having his 11s.
Third breakfast. I'm not sure.
But we always talk about, and we talked about this with the A Night in Heaven episode. I always like to wonder, like, what happens after this? Like, and again, in canonically in Dracula, Jonathan and Mina end up marrying. They have kids. I think they named one of the kids after Quincy P. Mars, and they're kind of okay after that. But because it suggested that Mina does not actually remember much of what she went through. Here I feel like they're just going to be like, constantly passive aggressively bringing it up to each other for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. If it wasn't for, you don't want to make dinner tonight? What happened when I rescued you from a vampire?
Well, I didn't ask you to rescue me from you, son of a bitch.
I was having laser sex. Do you know what that's like? No, you don't. You know why? You don't give me laser sex. There's no bats flying through a tunnel when we're going at it.
It turns into that the Patton Oswalt sketch about the Stellador breakfast treat.
Right. Oh man. Anything else about Dracula 1979 we need to talk about?
You know what? It's very nice to look at. Yeah. As long as you go in expecting that this is, kind of its own thing and doesn't really follow the story except in the most basic ways, it's a lot of fun. I think that, Frank Langella is probably I wouldn't say top 5 vampire, but top 5 Dracula for me.
Yeah, 100%.
I think he definitely. I never really cared. I'm gonna say that potentially controversial here. I never really cared for Bela Lugosi's Dracula, even though that's what everybody thinks of immediately.
The Spanish language version looks better.
Yes,
and the Dracula is better.
Yeah,
it's a sexier affair all across the board.
It's just funny that has become like, even now, like for Halloween costumes, you've got the slicked back hair, you've got the cape, none of which was reflective of the Dracula in the book. This was entirely designed for the play and for Bela Lugosi. I always thought he was very stiff to me.
Yeah. I think he is playing a type of Dracula that is unknowable, that is beyond human knowledge. And so he's a creature, and it's very xenophobic.
Yes.
Portrayal for the most part.
Yes.
That he's this outsider who, slithers their way into normal society and feeds off of good English white stock, as it were.
Right. He seems almost kind of asexual, whereas Frank Langella is very sensual. As we mentioned, he walks into this dinner party like, I'm, my name is Buck and I love to fuck. At one point when he shows up to to claim Lucy. Like his shirt is like unbuttoned. He's got the chest hair on display.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh man, he's ready. There's nothing metaphorical about his blood taking, his penetration.
Yeah. Just quickly, some filmography notes here. This version of Dracula was written by W.D. Richter. If that name sounds familiar to you, it should. Not only did he create one of my favorite terrible TV movies of all time, Slither, which Starbuck from the original Battlestar Galactica turns into a snake in real time. Or is it Barry Bostwick? I can't remember it somewhat.
I think it's Starbuck.
Yeah. Also, he then rebounded from that to write Nickelodeon, a film you're probably not familiar with it because in a sense, the whole movie seems to be about racism on screen. And it stars Ryan O'Neal and his daughter he liked to punch when she got nominated for an Oscar and he didn't, Tatum O'Neal. It's a movie that deserves to go away for a very long time. After that, he does Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the 78 version.
Hell yeah, one of my favorites.
Fucking rocks. Off of this into Brubaker, which is an interesting, if tone deaf, little prison tale. All Night Long, a film that is fucking bizarre. And then ultimately, Big Trouble in Little China. And of course, he directs in between that, The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension.
I love this guy.
So, and then he ended up also writing Stealth. So good for him. Stealth, everybody.
Heck yeah.
An actual motion picture. Whereas this film was directed by John Badham, as we mentioned a couple of times. He came out of TV in the early 70s, you know, stuff like The Streets of San Francisco and Night Gallery. He did a bunch of night galleries. But then when he finally makes the leap to feature films, his first is the Bingo Long Traveling All-Stars and Motor Kings, which is the first movie that kind of tackles the all Negro League, as it was referred to. And then after that, he follows it up with the genuine cultural defining moment that is Saturday Night Fever, a movie which, if you have not seen, you seem to think it's about dancing. But if you have, you know it's dancing takes up like 20 minutes and the rest of it is fucked up.
It is a gritty, depressing movie.
It truly is in almost every way. So this is his kind of blank check. Like Universal's like, what do you want to do? We have the rights to Dracula. And he's like, yes, I want to do it. And I want to get, you know, Frank Langella off the stage and I want to make this whole thing. And they gave him $12 million and it kind of does okay. It makes twice its budget, so it's fine. But then at some point in the 90s, he desaturates this so that it looks more like a black and white movie. And for my money, the full color one is the way to go.
Yes.
Then another truly depressing film, Whose Life Is It Anyway? Another Universal Oscar attempt. Then after that, his 83 is fucking nuts because not only does he direct Blue Thunder, but then he steps in to direct War Games, in which the original director walks away from that movie.
Yeah, he basically like directed a lot of shit that you watched on cable as a child. If you're like our age.
Yes, Short Circuit, which is casually racist as they come. Stakeout, Bird on a Wire. The Hard Way, which I haven't watched in a long time. I don't remember liking. Other people seem to like it very much.
That's the one with James Woods and Michael J. Fox.
Yes.
I know that I have seen that. Couldn't tell you anything about it.
Could not tell you a single thing about it other than it takes place in New York. The American version of La Femme Nikita, Point of No Return, or is that different? Nope. Bridget Fonda. Yeah, it's American. La Femme Nikita. And then after that, oh boy, I lost my place. Another stakeout, terrible film. Drop Zone, a Wesley Snipes parachuting heist movie that has to be seen to be believed. Nick of Time, in which wine vampire Johnny Depp attempts to play a normal person in a Die Hard movie, basically.
Is that the one that's like in like real time?
Yes.
Okay.
It's literally a 90-minute clock.
Again, I have seen it. That is all I remember about it.
Fucking terrible. But then he goes back to TV and he does like 1 or 2 episodes of TV a year, every single year. God bless him. John Badham. Last credit he has is for the Freeform series Siren, about a scary mermaid.
Is he still with us?
Yes, he
God
is.
bless.
As far as I am aware, checking only born listed here. So
God bless.
God bless. So just a wild filmography from both of them, and a true film of its time that I think is worth everyone's time and attention to watch at least once.
Yeah.
Scream Factory has a fantastic disc that's probably on sale for Valentine's Day.
Yeah, I rented it on Amazon Prime, so you have that. You have that option as well.
Yes,
it's it's fun. I would say I don't know if it quite falls on the side of campy. I think it's a little too self-serious. Yeah. But it's if you're a fan of bodice ripper romance novels, you'll like it. It's got that. It's got that look. Everything's very heated. You got a lot of repressed sexuality happening, unless you're Jonathan Harker, who's just like smooth as a Ken doll for all we know. But yeah, it's fun. It's no Bram Stoker's Dracula, but again, Coppola definitely lifted a lot of imagery and stylistic choices directly from this.
Directly from this motion picture. And what he's trying to do with Dracula is different than what's going on here. And yeah, I think that sort of Harlequin romance paperback version of Dracula, that's what this is.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a fun flick. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, this was our Valentine's Day gift to you. We hope you love it.
There's nothing more romantic than 2 people who've never met and are married to other people talking about fucking. Do we have new people to thank?
We do. We have one new patron. I want to welcome and thank you, Alexis.
Okay. Thank you, Alexis. For myself and for Gina. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.